Hello, welcome to another episode of Resilience in Small Doses with Dr. Novil at Resiliencetube. Today, we are going to learn about the term vulnerability. Vulnerability can be defined as the conditions determined by physical, social, economic, and environmental factors or processes which increase the susceptibility of an individual, a community, assets, or systems to the impacts of hazards. This definition is from the United Nations International Strategy for Disaster Reduction. Vulnerability is a multi-dimensional concept. Dimensions of vulnerability could be physiological, physical, economical, political, social, or psychological. Vulnerability interacts with the physical hazard agent to produce disaster risk. Greater vulnerability of an individual or group is associated with more risk for a given level of disaster exposure. In many disasters, emergencies, and crises, children, pregnant mothers, differently abled persons, poor, and minority groups are more vulnerable than others. Sometimes vulnerability could be in the built environment. Poorly designed and constructed houses and buildings, roads and other infrastructure, water, electricity, and other supplies could make them vulnerable. Psychological and social vulnerability also becomes important during disasters, emergencies, and crises. In many instances, we could estimate who might be most vulnerable before a disaster. We can use disaster and emergency preparedness, health promotion, community development, and community mobilization as tools to reduce vulnerability. During the response, we should pay special attention to the vulnerable groups within the population. We could get such vulnerable groups involved in the response actively as a strategy to reduce the vulnerability. During the recovery, we have to minimize vulnerabilities using the Build Back Better principle. If we do so, by the time the next disaster or emergency hits, the community could be less vulnerable. Thank you very much for watching Resilience in Small Doses with Dr. Novil at Resiliencetube. Let's meet with another episode of Resilience in Small Doses.